All right, we're going to try to connect with Chris Mannix. I just want to throw out his headline from his most recent Sports Illustrated piece because I think it is the food for thought that all of us are tossing around today. The headline is, Warriors believe in themselves. Maybe you should too. So, do ya?
Right? More and more.
Pop quiz, hot shot. Do ya?
Do you believe in them?
Yeah.
It's getting easier to believe in them with each passing day.
We believe, indeed. Yeah. So where is this going? I mean, that is the constant question, and that means two things: this year and beyond. Let's find out what Chris Mannix has to think. One of our favorites and a great writer out there. The article's in Sports Illustrated. Maybe you should too. The Warriors believe in themselves. Hey, Chris, what's going on?
What's going on, guys?
A lot, quite a bit. Where everyone's trying to figure out. They don't want to get the old okey doke here, but it's good sometimes to get the perspective from outside the city with no emotion. Are we supposed to believe in what we're seeing right now?
Well, the sample size is getting bigger by the game, right? And, over the last 11, the numbers speak for themselves. Winning 9 out of 11, having a top 3 ranking in offensive and defensive efficiency, being 4th in net rating. You see some of the tweaks that were made, specifically playing Draymond more at the 5. All these things are working. And, look, it's not some young team that's getting hot that you wonder if they can hold up over the course of the season. We've seen Golden State, do this before. Granted, this has been a tougher season than most, but, Steph's not going to tail off. He's probably only going to keep getting better. I think Draymond's been great since he's been back in the mix. Kuminga gets better every single game, and I think we're now firmly all on board on Brandon Podziemski being, what he is this year. A solid scorer and one of the best rebounding guards in the league. So, I think you can have some faith that the way the Warriors have played over these last 11 games is something that's sustainable, something they can hold up over the final 25-plus games of the season.
10-5 since Draymond came back, but I want to ask you more about the Steph Curry part of this because he's 20 days away from his 36th birthday.
Yeah.
And Mark and I were just talking about what a contract extension might look like in a couple of years. Is this the new normal, Chris, with players in their mid-30s continuing to play elite basketball?
It's probably case by case, right? But in today's NBA, especially if you're someone like Steph Curry that plays largely on the perimeter, and look, Steph is abnormal too in that his motor is second to none. He is constantly in motion, so his conditioning has sustained him, into his 30s. But yeah, look, it is something that I think is going to become more the norm, not just in basketball either, but in all sports, because the training is a little bit better. The treatments are a little bit better. Teams are, as we've seen in the NBA, more and more wary of burning these guys out. So they're going to go out of their way to make sure players are fresh and healthy over the course of every single season. So yeah, I think for top line guys and even for second tier guys, I think you'll see a lot. You see PJ Tucker in his 40s now. Like I think you're going to see a lot of guys that have a particular skill set able to play deep into their 30s.
Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated, with us, Willard and Dibs. Chris, you know this. All of the talk is sort of about like the future. What do you do, right? Do you kind of stick with the status quo? Do you make big changes? For you, what's the line that decides that? How far do they have to go for the organization to sort of stick with the current plan?
I think getting to the second round and being competitive in the second round is probably the floor, for what you'd need to see. Look, the play-in tournament, if it stays kind of the way it is right now, which is no guarantee because the Western Conference standings are as fluid as anything, but the play-in tournament is probably going to be brutal, right? Like I think Phoenix is still there, is there right now. Dallas is in there, Golden State, the Lakers. It's an NBA's dream because their play-in tournament will have major markets and major stars competing in it. But I think getting out of the play-in tournament is going to be tough. And when you get to the first round of the playoffs, you're talking about matching up with a Denver or an Oklahoma City or Minnesota, the Clippers. Like these are tough series, to try to get wins. But if the Warriors can get through a first-round series against one of those top-tier teams, and I think they've got a good chance against, at least a couple of them, I think that would be enough to double down on this version of the team and try to build on it moving forward.
And that's interesting because the Klay Thompson piece, the deeper they go, would probably mean that he's playing pretty well as a sixth man. Do you see Klay looking at a future here as a sixth man and taking a discount, or would he be looking for greener pastures, getting more money in a new location?
It's hard to say. Well, a couple things you said there, right? Like, there will be teams after Klay Thompson this offseason. Even though it's been a struggle for him this year, I have not talked to many, if any, people that think he's just washed, right? Like, it's been a tough year. It's been a tough transition for them. This team's obviously better with Podziemski in that starting lineup. Kuminga taking off has added a new wrinkle to it. Andrew Wiggins getting back to his former self, the last 11 games to a few weeks is adding a new wrinkle to it. But he's still got some game left. So there will be teams. Maybe it's Philadelphia, New York, teams that are out there that are going to look to make a run at Klay Thompson. But if I'm Klay Thompson and I don't want to leave, there's nothing wrong with embracing a sixth-man role. Like, it's a small sample size, but that Utah game was great, and maybe he can't play a 35-point, 28 minutes type of game, but he could easily average, 15, 16, 17 points off the bench and extend his career. I mean, we just talked about, guys playing into their 30s. Guys like Steph can do it as starters and stars. A guy like Klay, how he's going to do it is adapting and changing his game, his place on a team. If he's willing to become a sixth man, I think you could see a valuable player on the Warriors or elsewhere that can play deep into his 30s.
Chris, you mentioned being all in on Podziemski and who he is, but who's he going to be? What's his ceiling?
I don't know. I mean, he's fun to watch. I love his rebounding first and foremost. What's the average? Like 7.5 rebounds a game as a starter. That's a valuable tool. Like, especially if you're a small team like Golden State. If you can have a guy that's 6'4" out there pulling down 7 rebounds a game, that's a huge asset to have. I have to punt on that. I don't have enough information on him to figure out what his ceiling is. I think he can be a starting player on a championship team. I think enough of him that he could be that type of guy. How he evolves offensively, how his game diversifies the next couple of years, that's just hard to predict right now, especially when he's playing opposite someone like Steph Curry. But he clearly fits into what Golden State is trying to do, and it's been such a huge boost to them to have him playing.
I'm loving your piece here at SI.com and the whole idea of do you believe in this, do you believe in that? And I got to the do you believe in Andrew Wiggins portion of the article, and I thought you could have written 17,000 words on that, Chris, because, I mean, Warrior fans believe and don't believe maybe over the course of 2 possessions. So where do you think the belief is with Andrew Wiggins internally, and do you believe in Andrew Wiggins, Chris?
I think the jury's out, both internally and externally. Yeah, it really is. Like, because, again, using the same phrase, sample size, we've had a pretty big sample size of him being bad, right, early in the season. But watching him play, last night and watching some of these Warriors games over the last 3 weeks, he just seems to have his confidence back. And you can see it when he's out there on the floor. He's not hesitating. He's attacking. He's making plays without thinking. And I think it's been contagious for him. He just gets better and better every single game. I mean, if you put a gun to my head, I would say, yeah, I am believing in Andrew Wiggins for the rest of this season because that player's still there. Like, he's not an old guy. Like, that player is still there that helped the Warriors win a championship in 2022. I'm based in the Boston area. They still have nightmares about the way he played in 2022. So I think that guy is still there. And I think the player we've seen over the last 3 weeks can be the guy and probably will be the guy that we will see over the next 25 games or so.
Chris Mannix with us on Willard and Dibs. Chris, this is interesting because right now our minds are suddenly, and your article is about the present. But there's been so much talk about the future, and Joe Lacob recently said that his belief in the future of the Warriors is sort of because we're the Golden State Warriors. We've built a brand that gets out. We are going to be a free agent destination, and sort of meant that whether Steph is here or not. Do you believe that?
No, I don't believe. Look, the New York Knicks are a brand. They have failed year after year at getting free agents. They had two star players in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving pass on going there to sign with an organization in Brooklyn that has no fan base whatsoever and has no brand and no identity at all. So, no, I don't think that the Golden State Warriors as a brand, the Chase Center as a building, living in San Francisco, I don't think these are the kind of allures that are automatically going to attract free agents. What free agents are attracted to, especially in this modern era where it's difficult to put together winning teams. It's going to get even more difficult, frankly, to put together winning teams because all these tax aprons are coming in. It's going to make it really hard to put that together. They're attracted to, star players being there already, and they're attracted to smart front offices that make the right decisions. That's why, look, what Golden State did in this past draft is that's among the reasons that guys will want to play there, because they're able to get cheap talent, in the first and second round that can play for you right away. If you have a proven track record of hitting on these kind of draft picks and supplying star players with the kind of support that they need to win championships around them, that's what's going to lure guys there and make them a destination, not, what they've done in the past. Because the past of today's players, it's largely irrelevant.
Are Steve and Steph here in Golden State part of what could also be attractive? The idea that you can come here and be a part of a share the ball culture and playing alongside one of the greats to ever do it?
Absolutely. I mean, as long as Steph is playing, guys are going to want to play with him. There's no doubt about that. And Steve Kerr is, look, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. He's a player's coach, and guys want to play for him, whether it's, with USA Basketball or with the Golden State Warriors. He's built himself into that type of guy. I think for Golden State, looking externally is probably not going to sustain them in the future. It's internally, like the improvements and the growth of Kuminga the rest of this year and into next year, into a guy that's now he's at number 2 option. Get him into like that 1A level where he can be, a consistent 20, 25 point per game scorer like he's been over the last couple of months. And continued improvement from Podziemski, getting him to like a 15, 20 point per game scorer who does a whole bunch of different things. They've got room there for enough internal improvement to put them into the mix for a championship over the next 2 or 3 years while Steph, presumably is still playing at this level.
Chris, it's interesting that you just said that, internal versus external, because what if it doesn't go well? What if this turns the other way? What are the external options? And we could even ask it this way, like what are interesting names that might be on the move this offseason?
Oh, it's tough to envision it right now because so many teams they feel they're competitive, right? Like the way the play-in tournament has changed things, that you've got a lot of teams that believe that if they can just get in, they can make a run. They saw what Miami did last year, going through the play-in, getting to the finals, and especially in the Western Conference. You've got some options there. Now, off the top of my head, I think Atlanta is likely to blow it up. I don't know if DeJounte Murray makes a ton of sense in a situation like Golden State's, but he'd be available. Trae Young might be available. And the teams people are keeping an eye on at the top, most notably, is probably Minnesota. Like if Minnesota flames out in the first round after having this great regular season, you could see a shakeup there that maybe involves someone like a Karl Anthony Towns who could be on the move. So those are the stars that are there. But I'll be honest with you guys, like when I think of Golden State, I think if it doesn't go well with this group, I don't know that the answer is trying to find someone on the outside to bring in that would make them a championship team. You might be in a position where you have to blow the whole thing up. And as painful as that might be, if you're looking at this team and saying, all right, we're a first-round team or a second-round team for the next 2 or 3 years, if we just keep this group together, that's not a reason to keep a group together. Getting to the second round of the playoffs and having a group stay together for the entirety of their careers, that's not a plan for an organization. So my opinion has always been, if it doesn't work out with this core, it might be a situation where they have to go a completely different direction.
And could that direction include LeBron James, a player that they were so covetous of at the deadline?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think LeBron, the people I've talked to around him have been pretty steady in saying he doesn't want to leave LA. Now that is for, basketball reasons, sure, but as much lifestyle reasons. Remember, he signed with LA in 2018 when they were really bad. Like, it wasn't like he was going to a contender like he did with Miami and like he did when he went back to Cleveland. He liked the LA lifestyle. His kids, his family are entrenched there. And my understanding is he doesn't want to leave. And I also think the Lakers are as well positioned as anyone this offseason to do something significant. They could have as many as 3 first-round draft picks to deal on draft night. And they could have a contract in D'Angelo Russell's and some other pieces that they can move to make the money work. So, they're a team that's going to be aggressive in trying to add talent to that roster. And I think they're going to be successful. And I think that's going to be enough for LeBron James to want to stay.
Chris, before you go, I just want to make sure I fully understand, because the lack of external options, there's that situation, but you kind of also mentioned that if this doesn't go well over the next 28 games, it is time to maybe blow it up. What does blow it up even look like for the Warriors if they were to do it right now?
I think it would probably begin with moving off Klay Thompson. Maybe he wants to sign somewhere else, and you just go with younger, cheaper options. That would be the first thought that jumped to mind. Look, I mentioned, I live in the Boston area, and I covered the Celtics for a long time and go to a lot of their games. And so my view of building teams is often through the lens of Danny Ainge, because I covered him the most early in my career. And Danny's opinion is either you need to be really good or really bad. Being in the middle is not acceptable. That's why when 2012 rolled around, he dumped, legends. He dumped Paul Pierce. He dumped Kevin Garnett. He dumped Rajon Rondo. That was a second-round team that the Celtics walked away from. But he just believed that if you're not going to be a championship contender, there's no point in keeping that group together. Now, I don't think that Mike Dunleavy and that front office will have the same approach. They'll do everything humanly possible to build a contender around Steph. But there may be a moment where you have to look and say, what's the best solution to make this team a contender, 4 or 5 years from now? Is it making a big deal that really shakes the roster up?
Chris, it's wonderful stuff, and the article's a really good read, and we appreciate your time today.
Anytime, guys.
Okay, Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated. Our article literally ends with this line: "They believe. Do you?"
Right.
It's like a movie trailer.